Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome to the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. And everyone, hey, welcome into the program. So today on the show, second part of the program, we will have computer and technology news. That's where we cover everything new, kind of emerging tech, new products, product releases, just anything that is noteworthy. Hey, we try to bring that to you. Keeping up on top of it is a full-time job, and yeah, we can barely do it. So everyone, you definitely want to check out that segment, but in the first part of the show we have a guest, and today's guest is none other than Drone Delivery Canada, and we have the president CEO here with us to tell us all about the company, what it is they do, how they do it, and yeah, just get a better idea of this drone sector that we've been hearing so much about. And obviously the pandemic has in so many ways accelerated a lot of technology, telecommuting and the kind of the infrastructure behind sending and receiving data and things like that. But in other ways, it has set back. So I wanted to definitely ask, kind of how the pandemic has affected the drone industry and drone delivery industry, as well as how highlighting some of the positives that you can definitely find there. So we'll get to our guest in just one moment. Before we do that, everyone, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including past shows, future shows, all the shows, as well as a link to our guest website. It'll be up there on the homepage, and yeah, you can find anything that we do here on Computer America at computeramerica.com. And of course, over on the right side of our site, you can see our contest and our, not really a contest, a giveaway. Computer America has just entered its 30th broadcasting season. We've been on the air for 30 years, and hey, everyone, we've come a long, long way, and we want to say thank you by giving away as much as we can to our audience. So enter for that, completely free, daily signups, daily giveaways, that kind of thing. But yeah, all month long in February. And yeah, thank you once again. Now, with that being said, why don't we go ahead, introduce our guest, and just get this whole thing going. So, as I said before, Drone Delivery Canada, and we have not had them on the program, but I'm really looking forward to it because we've been hearing about, so many companies here in the United States looking for solutions for that last mile, that so hard, that's, I guess, I don't know if delivery guys are tired of, kind of dogs or, there's fences and gates. There's so many little things that everyone has with their home that I guess drone delivery could solve. It's efficient. It's so much, I guess, better in so many ways. It's just not here yet. So to tell us all about why and how and all that good stuff is, again, Michael Zahra. He is the president and CEO of the company. And Michael, welcome on to Mike, I should say, welcome on to Computer America. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, and congratulations on your 30 years. That's great.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been quite a while, and Craig started this whole thing back in like 1991 down in West Palm Beach, Florida, out of the basement of a university. And, we've been going strong ever since. So thank you so much for that. But hey, that's our little bit of history. Mike, if you wouldn't mind sharing a bit of history of, Drone Delivery Canada. I got to say that drones, are not exactly, an old industry. It's not like trains. Drones haven't been around for a while. So how did you get into drones? Why a drone delivery company? And what is your background as well? Have you always been in high tech?
Sure. So maybe I'll kind of start with my background. So I'm an engineer, electrical engineer, and then I did my MBA shortly after that, and then did a professional logistics designation. But I've worked mostly in high tech companies. Motorola, Alcatel, Schlumberger, and also in logistics companies. So it was a good fit for me with an engineering background, business background, and I had a relationship with the company through a past life and some past projects. So that's how I came to start with the company. Company is about 6 years old, publicly traded, and very exciting history and exciting future as well.
Yeah, and of course, this is really exciting because, like I said before the interview, that we've heard a number of companies, especially delivery companies, looking into drones, and we've heard a lot of fantastic stories about using drones in like medical campuses and things like that to deliver organs and whatnot. There's been so many feel-good stories about drones, but that transition has been either slow or it's still coming, and obviously you'd be able to shine more light on this. But let's see, where's a good place to start with all this? What is the potential of drone delivery? Why a drone delivery company? What problem in the market are you trying to solve with your products and services?
Sure. So the drone industry does have a little bit of history. It started off a long time ago, mostly consumer drones, and then some professional drones, but mostly around data collection and imagery and mapping and agriculture and spraying and these sort of things. So it does have some history. But as I mentioned, we started the company about 6 or so years ago, specifically working on delivery applications and delivery use cases. So moving cargo. Now, we don't really care what the cargo is. Hypothetically, we can move sensors and cameras and these sort of things, but the primary focus is on cargo. So at a high level, the use cases are threefold. Two have been around for a while, and one is actually new as a result of the pandemic. So the first one is really difficult to access location. So it could be an indigenous community, and they tend to be, at least in Canada and other countries, in remote areas. It could be non-indigenous communities that have poor access or seasonal access. It could also be oil and gas projects or mining projects that also, of course, tend to be remote and not urban. So really the first use case is around last mile delivery, access to difficult locations, and last mile can be a major pain point and a major expense for courier companies, or last mile distances can create very poor quality of life, medical issues if you can't get access, and these sort of things. So that's the first one. The second one is really where deliveries are time critical. So maybe you can get there, but if I can get there more quickly with the drone, you could be saving lives in the case of medical applications, as you mentioned. If you're moving defibrillator to a cardiac arrest person, if you're moving blood to somebody in need of a blood transfusion, or if you're moving organs or these sort of things. And then for commercial industrial applications, time can be money. So anything that's time critical lends itself quite well to drones, because it's a direct flight, obviously, or you don't have to deal with the traffic and other issues. And then the third use case, which I mentioned as a result of the pandemic, is limiting person-to-person contact, but keeping the supply chain open. So you may have a hospital campus, as you mentioned. You may have a hospital that works with a lab, or a hospital that works with a seniors center, or you may have a hospital that has a large, campus of multiple buildings. They want to prevent cross-contamination. You could have a mining camp. You could have an indigenous community. They want to prevent the virus from coming in or cross-contaminating, but they need to keep the supply chain open. So you can do contactless delivery with drones and also limit person-to-person contact, but still keep things moving in both directions. So those are really at a high level the use cases that we're working towards with our projects.
Yeah, and of course, a couple of those. I mean, I just found this video. I know that this isn't your company specifically, but it's by IEEE, and they're highlighting Zipline, which I believe is in Rwanda. There we go. And they deliver blood and kind of blood transfusions by drone over vast distances. That it's and they actually catapult their drones to kind of give them a little oomph to really get up there in the air. And these new applications that I guess we've always needed, like you said, to move things and move them faster. That's always been there, but I guess drones have that ability to, I guess, kind of solve that problem. And I guess, and to be clear, I should have asked this from the beginning. Drone Delivery Canada, do you make your own drones? Do you source your drones from other companies? I know that many drones are produced, made in China and imported, especially here in the U.S. By different drone companies. Do you make your own drones? Do you source them from outside, and you're just providing the service?
So we do assemble our own drones. We have 3. We have the Sparrow, the Robin, and the Condor. They are assembled in-house. The intellectual property is ours. The patents are ours. So the full system, including software and the other components, as part of the solution, like the drone spot depots and battery chargers, et cetera, those are all our intellectual property. And yes, we do assemble the drones in-house ourselves.
Perfect. And of course, here on your site, everyone, dronedeliverycanada.com. And, I believe these 3 that we're showing on the air here, are your 3 different products. And by the way, these things are, we've had companies that are using drones for kids' toys. We have drones that are for, kind of amateur to professional photographers that want to do that kind of thing, hobbyists and what have you. But here you have drones that are, I apologize, my metric to imperial conversions aren't that good, but max payload about 10 pounds or about 4.5 kilograms, max range 30 kilometers. That's 15, 20 miles, something like that. These things are big and can lift a lot of things for very, very far distances. We could go into the use case of each one of these, but why don't you go ahead and highlight, where some of the initial interest was for your drones, and kind of where you, I guess, kind of started out, because you laid out a couple of use cases. Where have your customers really kind of come from?
So when the company first started many years ago in discussions, and this was all new and a crazy idea back 6 years ago or 7 years ago, in discussions with the federal government and in Canada, the regulator is Transport Canada, similar to the FAA in the U.S. Discussions with them were what resonates with the government, what resonates with the regulator to move this industry forward, because we're not just building the company, we're building the industry as one of the leaders and one of the first companies in this space. So for them, moving coffee and muffins and a pizza in 5 minutes instead of 15 minutes, that didn't really resonate with the government. That wasn't really important to move the industry and the regulations forward. So in those early days, we wanted to develop a very collaborative relationship with the government. And what resonated with them were remote communities, indigenous communities, which there are close to 1,000 in Canada. There are many in the US and around the world. And for them, the healthcare wasn't up to standard. They typically have very poor healthcare infrastructure. They tend to be even more susceptible to things like the virus that we're all experiencing right now. So that resonated with the government. So the early days were really about addressing remote communities, starting in Canada, and then of course globally. And that was with the Sparrow, which was our first drone, and we still have the Sparrow, and it's still operating. And then as we started to commercialize the business, we looked at other vertical markets, and that's when we decided that we would expand and continue to focus on remote communities, indigenous and non-indigenous, but also look at courier companies, e-commerce, healthcare, oil and gas, and mining, and government applications or military applications. Really, very, 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 very broad range of vertical markets that we can address. So that's kind of how it all started. Mm-hmm. The vertical market that seems to resonate the most is in healthcare. Certainly, mining and oil and gas, there's the very strong ROI, given the nature of their business. But healthcare tends to check all the boxes on the three use cases that I mentioned. A lot of these communities that are remote have poor healthcare, time critical deliveries, improving quality of life. And then, most recently, as I mentioned, limiting person-to-person contact because of the pandemic. So I would say healthcare resonates the most with drones, and then and the others, of course, secondarily, but still important. So, some of the projects that we have running right now are healthcare related, and in fact, pandemic related.
I'm actually pretty interested in this idea that a lot of the applications you just talked about are really for the fact that the infrastructure does not exist. If the infrastructure to drive things there or to get things there efficiently by other means, that might be, that would move your focus to other places where I guess the infrastructure hasn't been built up yet. I'm wondering, in your mind, and of course your team's mind, because you seem to, we saw a couple of your team there in that video with Global Medic and drone delivery, where your team and you see drones in a fully fleshed out community, society, what have you. We've heard some talks with delivery companies here in the United States that, they would send out package, like your Amazon package from a truck that would kind of park in the middle of a neighborhood. They would send all the drones out and drop everything off at the doors. They would all come back to the delivery truck, and then they drive away. I'm wondering where you see drones when everything is kind of, accessible, everything's good to go. Do you see drones being a day-to-day, just like we see delivery trucks nowadays, do you see drones being a day-to-day kind of commonplace thing in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. And all of the things that you mentioned, and even moving people, one day. But it's really a nascent industry. It's definitely gotten a lot of traction, and it's really, taking off, I guess, mm-hmm. pun intended. But how it's progressing forward, because it's also a regulated industry. So, the regulator needs to feel comfortable, and then they relax the regulations, and then there are more use cases. They relax the regulations, there are more use cases. So we always say a bit of a crawl, walk, run approach. So, what can we do today, and what can we sell today? What revenue can we generate today? And that's really remote, rural, and suburban applications that are mostly business to business. Going to urban centers like downtown Toronto or downtown New York or LA or what have you, those will happen, but they're not happening today. And any of the videos that you see, I would say, are more for for PR value or pilots and these sort of things, right. Which is great. So the industry moves forward. But, you're not going to see, I would say, en masse residential deliveries today. You will see them in the future. And I think the scenario of bringing things directly to your home, apartment building, condominium, your business, that is absolutely going to happen. Not today. It will happen tomorrow. But it's definitely going to happen. So you will see widespread use of delivery drones for business to consumer direct, but today it's more business to business. And then, as I said, I never say never. One day mm-hmm. drones will be moving people, but that's still quite a ways away.
Yeah, we definitely saw a few of those at the 2020 CES, and I think there was even some talk at 2021 CES of doing that kind of thing. But people movers, that's that's something for where the infrastructure is actually there, places like LA, New York City, but it's again kind of a time sensitive thing, and they just did not being able to carry people from one building to another without having to use roads is definitely important. So so I definitely see where you're saying that to get this foothold just in the consumer space, it's not really cost effective, or this en masse approach really isn't really going to work. But obviously this is something that you are working towards, where people are going to have these in their lives day to day. So that's just
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really, the technology is there. We could technically do it tomorrow, residential or whatever you want. It's really around the regulations that prohibit, flying in high density populated areas and these sort of things, without getting into all the technical many pages from the regulator and how the industry works. But it's really the regulations that are
we can
relaxing.
talk. Yeah, and if you don't mind, we can talk a little bit about kind of what regulators are trying to avoid, and what the prevalence of the actual technology, or what that is in the actual technology. For instance, failure rate of drones. I think that a lot of the regulation about drones is, what if one of these things falls in someone's head, and the regulation is trying to prevent that. Where they can fly, how high they can fly, how fast, and that kind of thing. And, you don't have to, kind of give specific numbers, or you could just talk about industry wide, but what exactly is the failure rate of a drone? Because everywhere that I hear, especially in business applications, this is a pretty reliable technology. Short of flying into the side of a building, drones generally stay up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've never, knock on wood, we've never had a crash in a commercial operation. We've intentionally crashed drones at our own test range, is just part of testing. That's normal. But they're very, very reliable. And if you look at sort of traditional passenger aviation, I would say a very, very large percentage of the time you're on that airplane, not that the pilot doesn't do anything, they're very, very important, and we're never going to be replacing them, but that plane is on autopilot for a big part of it, which is very kind of similar to what we're doing with automatic navigation and GPS and these sort of things. But absolutely, I mean, they're very, very reliable. But I think the regulator wants more data and more experience from us and others, the industry in general. And as they get that, and they're definitely getting that, because there are other companies who are using drones, as I mentioned earlier, for photography, data collection, and things unrelated to us. As they get more experience, they get more comfortable with the risk, they get more comfortable with the failure rates, and then they relax the regulations and move the industry forward. That's how any industry evolves and moves forward. The regulator has a role. We support their role. We don't want an industry that has no regulations and everything is very cowboy and everybody's doing whatever they want. So we appreciate that there are regulations, and we think the regulators in Canada, United States, and elsewhere are doing the right thing and moving forward at an appropriate pace. And even within the constraints of today's regulations, there are still many use cases and projects that we can do that we're working on.
Right. Yeah. And I've said that after talking with the FAA and drone manufacturers across the world, the way that regulation came about here in the United States was a lot like smart cars, or kind of self-driving cars, where companies were starting to do it and they didn't really say anything, and then the regulators kind of jumped up and said, okay, this is becoming a thing, we need to start regulating this. And drones in particular, I remember that there was very little regulation on drones until probably about 4 or 5 years, or I should probably say about 6 years ago now, that it became a little bit more than just a hobbyist and, a couple of hobbyists here and there. And you could buy them off a store shelf for $100 and start getting into trouble by flying them, close to airplanes. And then the FAA stepped up and they were like, all right, people can hurt themselves and other with these things. Let's jump on this. Reactionary, I guess, kind of regulation and that whole thing, that's how it started, but you're saying that the regulation is now looking ahead and saying, how do we start to evolve this industry into something sustainable and, that kind of works within our society, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the drone industry might be, I even hesitate to say the drone industry is new, because it's not really new anymore. I mean, it's some aspects of it are new, but it's definitely not mature, but there's a lot of experience. But the nice thing about the drone industry is it's fitting within the aviation industry, which is very mature.
Yeah.
So we're partnered with Air Canada. We understand transportation, logistics, transportation of dangerous goods. We use an established aviation risk modeling system, procedures and policies that we pull from aviation. So there is sort of some history there. You mentioned automated cars, which are great, but if you look at the density of traffic on roads and compare that to the density of traffic in airspace, and given that airspace is three-dimensional, you would think that it would actually be easier and safer to be flying drones in airspace than automated vehicles, and I would argue that is the case. I mean, the airspace is pretty empty compared to a road.
So, and this is probably going to be a good thing for Drone Delivery Canada. I got to say that because the technology, just like you said, it's not exactly new, but it's not mature yet. I feel like this is going to be an industry much like the wireless communication industry, with everything being chips and internet connected and things like that. When it reaches maturity, and these things, and drones become affordable, any company can do this kind of thing. The applications are numerous, and everyone wants a piece of that application. I feel like the airways not being congested is just a matter of time before drones, are going to have their own highways that they can kind of take in the air. They're going to have to, be in certain places. I got to say, it seems like there's a lot of pent up demand. And of course, there's a lot of demand that doesn't even exist yet because drones are not as common as they could be. So that's my only qualification there, is that, saying that the airspace is, so vast and that kind of thing. Yes, but at the same time, I feel like if they just threw their arms open and said, everyone gets a drone, that space would fill up very quickly. There's a lot of demand.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's why we like it to have some regulations, and most countries have regulations that might be evolving for drones, but it's not a free for all in, I would say, right, 99% of the world, and we welcome that. I mean, if a country where we could be operating doesn't have strict regulations, we're going to use our own policies and procedures and bring that level of safety and to it. But again, the airspace. So a couple of comments. I agree with what you're saying. I think it's early, and the airspace is going to get full, but the airspace is three-dimensional. I mean, it's still right, pretty big compared to a two-dimensional road. I mean, road, you can go forward, backward, right, and left. You can't go up and down today on a road. In the future when there's flying cars, absolutely. But what will evolve in the industry, and NASA's working on it, we're looking at it, governments and private industry are looking at it. It's something called UTM, Universal Traffic Management. So our flight, FLITE, our flight software does allow us to fly in active airspace, controlled airspace. We can see other aircraft. We can see other drones. We can see large birds. We can see what's going on. We've got a detect and avoid type system. As that airspace starts to get more populated, then there will be a UTM. I think it's still a ways away, because who's going to run it? Who's going to own it? Who's going to develop it? What are the standards? Who's going to pay for it? How does it get paid for? These sort of things take a long time to be established. But for us, our flight software is essentially a UTM. And if there were a third party or government UTM that controls all drones in the airspace, ourselves and others, we could easily plug into that UTM with our own flight software and integrate into it, no problem. So I think you're right. There will be an evolution of the space being more dense. I don't think a lot of it will be as dense as downtown LA or New York or Toronto during rush hour. But there will be a UTM, which will bring it all together. It could even be our flight software that's a UTM, where we could plug into something from the government.
Yeah, for sure. And the only reason I'm kind of cautious about that is because every time I see a technology and, people kind of say that, this is, this is the upper limit, seeing how many sensors and how many wireless communication devices and that kind of thing, there is no upper limit is what I'm saying. So, but I can definitely see that's a pretty distant future, and but still an exciting thing to kind of think about. So, getting back to what the regulators are trying to devise for today, and some of the concerns that people have. Again, the first one was crashing, failures, falling on people's heads, that kind of thing. I think the second concern is privacy. And obviously, every drone uses line of sight. There are cameras on these things. I know that there's a lot of automation that happens with, with this industry. And like you said, a lot of it is a lot of drone flight is autopilot. But let's face it, it's cameras over people's property, over people's heads. Some people might have concerns. What do you have to say about privacy, security, and just the ability to make sure that only the correct people are accessing the cameras for, I guess, kind of valid reasons?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and it's one that comes up more around ultimately consumer deliveries versus B2B, where we're flying over industrial areas or green space or what have you. But I think our engineers were very smart when the company was first started, and I think they were very visionary. So we actually don't have cameras on our drones. We
Really?
have a small camera on the bottom that's not, I wouldn't really call it a camera. It's used when it lands in the drone spot. It picks up something called a fiducial marker, which is like a barcode that allows for more accurate optical sensed landing. But that's not really a camera that's taking pictures or video. It's purely to detect a barcode. So we have no cameras on any of our drones. We don't fly based on what's called visual flight rules from the traditional aviation industry. We would be what they call IFR, instrument flight rules. We're flying based on a autopilot system, based on a GPS system. So we're not using cameras. So when the day comes that we're flying in residential areas, our drones are not particularly noisy at all. There are no cameras, so it's not really an issue. And when it comes to people accepting drones, I think the first true residential deliveries beyond the pilots and the coffee and muffins and pizza and all that kind of stuff that's happening now, I think the true first residential deliveries are going to be healthcare related. They're going to be a defibrillator, medical supplies, your prescription from the pharmacy because you can't get out of the house, and these sort of things. So I think people are going to welcome them. And in our case, it's a very safe, secure, disciplined model. No cameras. The cargo goes inside the drone. It's safe. It's secure. It can be temperature controlled. So our model is very different than others. And I'm happy the people that designed our system thought about all these things ahead of time.
Yeah, for sure. And here on the show, we cover a lot of news, and it's fun hearing that, a lot of the same stories that we've been covering here on the show, you are actually referencing, things like, healthcare. And there was one in Australia that I don't think you mentioned that lifeguards have been using drones to get life preservers out to, swimmers who get swept out by a rip current or something like that. Until the lifeguards themselves can get out there to the person. Little things like that, hey, like you said, I think that someone will be very happy that there's a drone giving them some life-saving equipment in that space. So I can definitely see that.
Yeah, even in Australia, I've seen instances where they're using a drone with special cameras to detect sharks where people are swimming. Mm-hmm. So I think people are going to welcome drones when they see the quality of life and the healthcare benefits. Absolutely.
So, and I'm trying to think if there's any other, kind of hangups that people might have over drones. And I guess it also comes back to kind of who's operating these drones. You said that you're working closely with the government and regulators, which is definitely great. But I feel like as the space evolves, do you see either government regulation or the industry itself putting up any kind of barriers to entry for new companies that want to enter the space? Or do you think it's going to be, kind of hard to do this because this is, again, a pretty sensitive area, which is, the space above someone's head. We don't exactly let pop-up airlines, fly every day. How do you see the space evolving when it comes to kind of new players versus, I guess, people who've been in the space for a while?
The regulators, Canada, US, or international, are definitely leaning towards companies who have experience, who have hours and of flights, who have a very strict internal program with policies and procedures. We're working towards ISO 9001. We'll probably have that in a couple of months. We use a risk analysis framework it's called JERIS SORA, which is an industry standard for analyzing the risk profile of a potential project. So I think the government is definitely leaning towards companies like ourselves who have rigorous systems, safety, quality, and these sort of things are paramount. Versus somebody who might be a new entrant who doesn't have that kind of maturity that we do. But then there are also people. I mean, they don't want to over-regulate the airspace
Right.
as well. There are thresholds. So if it's a small consumer drone, then you the basic rules, and you have to take an online course in Canada. It's for $10, and you can get a basic drone license and fly your drone in the park for fun, which is fine. They don't want to over-regulate that. But when it comes to more industrial, commercial grade things like what we're doing, or
Right.
even widespread residential deliveries, they're definitely, you're right, leaning towards companies who have the maturity that we do.
Makes perfect sense. And just to mix one new technology with another, how excited are you for things like 5G and better cell coverage, and just the fact that not saying that you're going to be using, let's say, things like Starlink, which is like a global Wi-Fi network, but or I should say a global satellite internet connection, but obviously data connectivity and data, kind of that quick transfer back and forth of data. For, I guess, an industry like you, that you would, I'm sure that drone companies would love the ability to have very quick, timely, accurate data back and forth constantly. Is that something that you're looking forward to, that, maybe 5G or maybe one of these other technologies is going to push your industry even further forward?
Yeah, so we've been working with those already for quite a while. So we can communicate to our again, the system runs unmanned automatically, so we're not constantly sending commands to the drone, but we've got an operations control center, which is the background image you see behind me, and we monitor, and then we can take control, deconflict, or do whatever we want to do. But for communications, we can communicate. Yeah, there you go. For communications, we can communicate to the drone in 4 different ways. It could be public radio frequency. It can be private radio frequency. So, somebody owns spectrum, us or the customer. But we've been using cellular for a very, very long time. There are some companies who've been point to point or just kind of getting into cellular. We've been using cellular communications for a very long time, and that's our preferred. But we also do use satellite. So if it's a remote location, or flying out to an oil rig at sea where there might not be cellular or any kind of communications, we can communicate via the Iridium satellite network to our drone. So I would say we're fairly mature in how we can communicate to our drones. The battery management system, the drone spot depots, they're all automated and connected to the flight software as well. So we don't do 5G today, but it's very, very easy for us to go from 4G to 5G, and that will bring in potentially more data, or these sort of things. But we're already in real time contact with our drone in terms of monitoring
Gotcha.
flight parameters, cargo temperatures, and these sort of things. But yeah, 5G will help. But I would say we're pretty mature in terms of the communication channels that we currently have.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about all the possibilities, but of course that would kind of open up places like residential and things like that. So yeah, thank you for answering that. You answered that very, very well, and we can go ahead and get a little bit more specific into Drone Delivery Canada when it comes to again, you assemble all your drones there in Canada, and you have all that kind of thing. What patents do you have? What intellectual property is yours? I mean, what has your team been working on since you were founded in 2014?
So the first few years were obviously developing the technology, and as we talked about earlier, working with the regulator. Because we are one of the earliest drone delivery companies, or drone companies in general, I would say. So we were helping the regulator, define some of the regulations. We have on staff folks from Transport Canada, from NASA, from the FAA. So the early days were around regulations and technology. And then the last few years have really been around, commercializing it, going operational, signing customers, generating revenue, and these sort of things. So I would say, that's the company's history, and that's what we've been focused on. But very much technology company. It's sold as a managed service, software as a service type model. But we have aerospace engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, definitely an engineering company, and intellectual property and patents are very, very important. So we have 2 patents now. We have, quite a handful of patents pending that we expect to be able to announce in the next little while. Nice. And of course, the trademarks and these sort of things. So the technology and patents around them is definitely part of our priority. But yeah, there's a lot of unique technology behind the scenes that we have for sure.
Perfect. And of course, with with that being said, are you operating strictly within Canada? Do you have partners in the U.S. and other parts of North America, or where are you seeing kind of partnerships start to spring up?
So we started in Canada, and that's where we operate today. So we're live operating customers. We're flying, literally as we speak, fully commercialized, generating revenue in Canada. We announced last year that we had started the process to enter the U.S. We have actually flown in the U.S. before, a beyond visual line of sight project.
Does the U.S.
well.
know?
Yes, they know. The FAA was there. For sure. The FAA was actually there with us, learning, and we're collaborating with them. So we've got a very good relationship and a lot of good mutual respect with the FAA. It was actually in New York, actually at an airport. So that was, the sort of a worst case example to prove what we could do. And we did that as beyond visual line of sight, probably, 2 years ago now. But we're operating in Canada. We've started the process to enter the US. We've signed letters of intent with partners in India, which is obviously a massive market, in Africa, which is also a massive market. And of course, we're looking at other markets like Europe and what have you. So definitely the US is on our radar, and that process has already started. And we're in, I would say, discussions that are fairly far along with potential partners in the US as well. Yeah.
I think that's, and I'm sure that you know this better than I do, but I think that's India and Africa in particular, where, building out infrastructure takes a long time, highways, roads, places like that. And as we've seen through the videos and pictures for anyone out there watching the video portion, but, drones just need a landing and a takeoff spot. There's not a lot of infrastructure that needs to happen in the in-between. So I think that those emerging markets are going to be really crucial for, they're going to need drones as much as drone is going to need, kind of that kind of application to really prove it. So yeah, I'm glad that you have reached out to, or that you have at least considered places like that. That's very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are use cases in every country. They're very, very different. And regarding the infrastructure, our preferred model is a depot to depot model, but we can also fly to a destination that has no infrastructure, drop cargo, and fly back. So there could be rural areas, North America, overseas, whatever, where there is no infrastructure. So we can still help countries, with a variety of projects, whether they're humanitarian or commercial. So absolutely. But the company is built for scale, and the company is built for global operations.
Right. Yeah. And obviously, as you said way at the beginning, that this, right now you're focused on business to business, business to consumer. I'm still hoping for the day. Like I remember that, and it was probably a PR stunt by a burrito shop, but a burrito shop said that they could track you using your phone, using an app, and they'd be able to drop a burrito pretty much on top of your head using a drone, if you were within their delivery area. So, little things like that, like you said, depot to depot is one thing, but hey, depot to no infrastructure anywhere is totally possible. So be that for medical equipment, burritos, or anything in between. So with that being said, and again, looking at your technology and the different drones that you have, each one is going to serve a little bit different of an application. This one here looks like your Sparrow has a bit more cargo space and it's going to be able to move that kind of thing. Your Robin XL is going to have a much longer range, things like that. You don't have to give away any secrets or anything that you're working on, but when it comes to developing new drones, because each one of these has its own, kind of form. Some of these look like, for people just listening, this one looks straight up like a helicopter. The next one looks more like a long range drones with the wings that can, kind of suspend itself. And this one looks like pretty much a mop bucket on with propeller blades. Going forward, do you see yourself developing different kinds of drones for different applications, or continuing to refine these things and, better battery life, better range, that kind of thing? What is the future of drone technology as it is concerned to, kind of Drone Delivery Canada?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. So a couple of things. I mean, we obviously, buy the batteries from a third party. We don't manufacture the batteries ourselves. So these sort of things, we will benefit from increased energy density, which will give us more payload lift and more payload range in the future. So that will happen. We're certainly looking at hydrogen fuel cells and these sort of other energy sources for the larger drones, more the Condor. So absolutely, we will benefit from those things going forward, and the existing drones, which we are monetizing, will have more capabilities just as a result of technology moving forward by third parties, which is great. I think one big difference between us and a lot of other companies, and I always like to joke about this, but it's true. Despite our name, Drone Delivery Canada, we're not a drone company. We
Software.
certainly, we assemble the drones. The magic is really around the flight software. It's a managed service, software as a service. But because that was our philosophy from the beginning, our system is what I call airframe agnostic, meaning we can put our system on somebody else's drone or somebody else's airframe. So I suspect that the drone after the Condor, whatever it looks like, and we're certainly looking at that, could be from a third party. It could be from another drone company, it could be from a Boeing or an Airbus, who knows? But we can put our system on somebody else's third-party delivery or passenger, moving drone. We could put our system on a Dash 8 or a Cessna, or hypothetically, a military helicopter for a military application for a government. So, I mean, the big difference is our ability to put our system on another platform gives us a really nice technology roadmap going forward.
I gotcha. So what I read from that was your next drone is going to be a Black Hawk helicopter. Perfect. It's going to be very impressive seeing that. No,
might be an Airbus 320 or a 787 or something. Who knows?
Yeah, there you go. And really, that is, I think, where a lot of the innovation really needs to happen, is this managed software side. That all of these drones, it's not even so much like we've said over this interview, communicating with your own drones, being able to manage your own drones, but being able to manage all the airspace at once and make sure everything communicates together. That's where I think other systems like the self-driving car industry is kind of working towards. It's not even so much about having your own self-driving car that works. It's about making sure that your self-driving car works with other people's self-driving cars, other people, pedestrians, civilians walking around on the street, and of course other cars that are not as sophisticated as your self-driving car. And my takeaway from what you just said with flight is that that's where you need to be, is that you need to be able to talk with all these other drones at the same time, as well as I guess kind of account for things that can't talk back to you.
Right, you're absolutely correct, and it's a lot of people they'll look at different drone companies, whether they're wanting to be an investor or wanting to be a potential customer or partner. And there's a lot of confusion because different companies do different things. Some are purely hardware manufacturers, which is fine. Some are using small drones for data collection or imaging. And then there are companies like us who, not to pat ourselves on the back, but I think we've taken more of a system approach, and I don't really see anybody else who has the same depth and breadth of what we do, because I mean we put a whole solution together with all of the components that we've developed. So I think that's really a big difference between what we do and others do.
No, and that makes perfect sense. So, yeah, and I think you made that, very, very clear. And of course, that means that there's a lot that you can do, I guess, kind of going forward, because, like you said, being agnostic, you can develop partners with, I guess, people that people who were strictly hardware would see as strict competitors, and you instead see them as, potential clients and potential partners. So. Yep. Makes perfect sense. And of course, so with that being said, we're going to wrap up this interview here in just a minute. And again, thank you for being so generous with your time, because I know this went a little long. But I also have a question here about, I guess you, Mike, as a person, when you're not behind drones, and, kudos to everyone out there that can have one passion and they can turn that into their business and not do anything else. It's great. But we have a question here about, when you're not behind drones, where would we find you?
Good question. I spend a lot of time in the office, or I guess working from home, or a bit of both. So that's the majority of my time. But outside of work, I enjoy traveling. I'm an avid photographer, so I enjoy landscape and wildlife photography. I love Formula One car racing. So looking forward to the season opening up again in March. So those are the kind of interests I've got outside of work. But engineering and technical things, I think it's really exciting. Yeah, that's what I'm all about.
Very cool. And this is a personal side, but because you mentioned Formula One, and I thought a nice little cross section of racing and drones is, well, drone racing. What do you think of that, kind of budding industry? I know that it's very, very young, and, they're still developing teams. It's almost like robot wars here in the United States, that, people would build their own robots to fight each other, but instead they're racing each other. They're building drones, and they're going through these insane obstacle courses and having speed trials. What do you think about, mixing drones and racing? Because again, a lot of what we talked about with Drone Delivery Canada is reliability, capacity, that kind of thing. Of course, there's just going to be naturally speed because they can fly, but drone racing is purely entertainment value, all about speed, not about, anything else. What do you think about that, particular cross section?
I think it's very, very cool, because it combines drones and technology. It also combines, racing, like you said, Formula One or other types of racing. But it also, it's almost like a real world video game where you're flying around. You've got a controller and you're controlling the drone. So I think it's incredibly cool. I think it's an industry that's got some traction and a cool factor, and there's going to be competitions and that sort of thing. So I think it's really cool. We don't do it, obviously, but our drones can go pretty fast. I mean, the Condor will go 120 kilometers an hour, so that's booting along. But I think there's so many different applications for drones, whether it's racing, whether it's what we do, whether it's data collection, whether it's mapping, whether it's crop spraying, whether it's imagery. I think it's just an industry that's just really got a lot of traction and is growing exponentially.
Yeah, in a lot of different directions. And I think that not the least of them is going to be delivery, just like we've been saying this whole segment, but also, kind of people moving and entertainment and food delivery and just tons of applications, just everything done faster, more convenient. And hey, that is the future of drones. And we are really looking forward to it here, and happy that you could come on our program and further enlighten us to kind of where the industry is at now, where it's moving. And I think this has been a really fun interview. So I'm going to ask you this before we wrap it up. Is there anything that we haven't touched on, anything that you'd like to, kind of talk about before we wrap this up?
No, I really appreciate the invitation. I enjoyed our conversation. It's a very exciting industry for sure. I'm happy to be part of it, and happy that we're building the company and the industry. And I would just say, for people who want information, they can go to our social media. They can go to our website, dronedeliverycanada.com. There's a lot of noise, I would say, in this industry, and we're one of the credible companies. So just make sure you get your information from reliable sources, directly from us or from our social media. Yeah.
And, actually, I got to poke you one little bit on that one. When you say there's a lot of noise, are there people who are promising a bit too much for drones? Like, are there people overextending or overplaying their hand when it comes to drone? I mean, what do you mean by that last point that you just said?
Yeah, no, it's good, and I always try to talk to whether it's investors or potential customers and partners about this. There are as with any new industry, this starts off with thousands of companies, and then it consolidates into a small number, just like telecommunications, automotive, what have you. So there are a lot of companies who are still very much in pilot phase or prototype phase, which is there's nothing wrong with that, but people need to be careful in terms of what they're investing in. People need to be careful in terms of who they're partnering with. Is it real? Is it legitimate? Are they really operational? Are they getting their information and doing their due diligence on companies from reliable sources? Or are they going to TikTok for investment advice or to find a partner? So I would just say make sure you look at a company who's credible and who's doing things real, because there are some companies who are posting claims that they might be doing something and it's really just computer graphics or whatever, and it's not real. So just due diligence, common sense. Yeah.
Yep, and I always make sure that whenever we have a company, I remember there was one company that we had on the show that they were showing amazing images and they had an amazing product, and they were like, "Yep, we expect our first commercial flight somewhere in 2027," and this was like 2 years ago, and we're like, yep, there you go. So it's very important to have a realistic timeline. This stuff doesn't develop overnight, but hey, you're delivering today. You are working with governments today, and this industry is not far off from being a part of everyone's really everyday life. So everyone, once again, we've been talking to Drone Delivery Canada and dronedeliverycanada.com. If you'd like to check out more of that, computeramerica.com. We'll have a link right there on our homepage. And everyone, we have been talking to Mr. Michael Zahra. He is the CEO and president. And Mike, thank you so much for joining us here on Computer America. It's been fun.
Thanks very much for having me, Ben. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. So we're going to go ahead. I think we can get one news story in. So Mike, we're going to be very rude and kind of end the Zoom call. But once again, thank you so much, and we'll do our thing. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks.
All right. So everyone, we're going to go ahead and do computer and technology news, and that's brought to you by Computer America. Let's go ahead and go. So for anyone out there watching the video portion, just want to say you may notice that the lighting is a little bit different, and I have to apologize for that because the lighting in my office actually broke halfway through that interview. The tape that's holding it up, of all things, is giving up the ghost. And in my office I have like 30 of those light panels, not going to say from which company. No, Nanoleaf light panels, and they self-admitted that their self-adhering strips, their double-sided adhesive strips, were total crap. And I ordered these things like less than a year ago. The expansion pack came with their self-adhering strips, their self-branded Nanoleaf. Their newer packs come with the new 3M, which work perfectly. But all the ones that I stuck up with the Nanoleaf ones are just falling apart time and time again. And I have to take them all down and put them back up. But man, it's just a pain in the neck. So let's talk about this one here real quick. And I wanted to, let's see. Okay, how about this one? We'll cover this and we'll call it a day. A lot of future talk with drones and all that kind of thing. Perfect, great, love it. But a little bit of past talk. Fry's Electronics. You remember them? Well, sadly, they're going out of business after 36 years. Man, a lot of these original electronics, everyone from, Fry's to Circuit City to, I'm trying to think of Radio Shack. They just did not fare well. Like, they were in the technology game, but they did not transition well into an online retail space. Probably Amazon's fault. But, Yep, the end of an era for technology fans. 36 years later, Fry's Electronics has officially confirmed that they're going out of business and closing all of its stores nationwide. Fry's explains that it made the decision to shutter its operations as a result of changes in retail industry and the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. So they said that while some locations already closed, the company will close its remaining 31 stores, which span 9 different states. And there you go. So as a family-owned business, Fry's was once an institutional part of the retail space, offering massive... Let's see, and yeah, we're good there. Okay. Offering massive stores filled with any piece of technology you might need. But as anyone who's visited Fry's in the last few years, the writing has been on the wall. The company has been struggled to adapt to the challenge of the retail space, and with pressure from Best Buy and Amazon alike, yeah, it's just not good. Fry's had attempted to pivot by offering aggressive price matching campaigns and expanding beyond technology and electronics, but those efforts ultimately proved fruitless. A variety of tweets and videos over the last year further showcased the barren shelves at Fry's locations. So there you go. That's about it. So as anyone who's a Fry shopper years ago will tell you, visiting the store was always an experience for technology fans. And there you go. So Fry's, sorry to see it, but I'm sure, as we said before, COVID has accelerated so much in the technology space. It has not really changed. Well, I'm sorry, it has changed a lot, but hey, Fry's was already struggling, and COVID just accelerated the end of the business. So sorry to see it go, and we hope that everyone's going to be okay. But everyone, computeramerica.com. We'll catch you next time. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.